Hey, I'm CoreyJoeWCG and let's fly with the fairies with the new commander deck from Eldraine. So in this video I'll be giving you a rundown of what you can get and expect when it comes to this new fairy deck from Eldraine, giving my thoughts and opinions at the very end and showing off what I think are the best cards or cards worth it when it comes to this deck. So when it comes to this deck, there is obviously a fairy commander, and that fairy commander is Tagwell, Duke of Splendor. For 1 blue and a black, you get a legendary creature, a fairy noble that is a mythic. It has flying and death touch. Other fairies you control get +1/+1. Whenever another fairy you control dies, you draw a card and lose a life, and it's a 2/3. For 3 mana, you get a fairy with flying and death touch. Is already really good. And it doesn't stop there. This commander powers up all your other fairies, and then when your fairies die, you get to draw a card. This card is absolutely amazing. It just keeps going. I love this commander. But with every commander, there is a sub. When it comes to the sub of this deck, it is Elena Cunning Conqueror. For 2 blue and a black, you get a legendary creature, Fairy Warlock, that is a mythic. She has flying. Whenever you cast your first spell during your opponent's turn, create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. Whenever one or more fairies you control deal combat damage to a player, go tag a creature that player controls, and it is a 2/4. Now, for 4 mana, you get a 2/4 with flying is kind of okay, but it has a really weird and unique ability. It is kind of annoying that you have to kind of play spells on other people's turns to fully benefit this card, but there's a lot of fairies with flash and a lot of instances that help you draw cards and stuff like that, so it does seem like it would be good. And then you get to watch your enemies smack each other around. It is a good commander, but I prefer the actual commander than the sub, but they are both good. But now the deck itself, starting off with the creatures. In this deck there is a total of 28 creatures. All of them but one are fairies. So if you've ever wanted to make a fairy deck your own, this deck already seems worth it because you get a 27 fairies from this. I did find it weird that there was one non-fairy, and I will be putting that in the list, but I will be showing you the best cards right now. Brazen Borrower, Fairy Blade Crafter, Nettling Nuisance, Blightwing Bandit, Scion of Una, Glen Egdale Archmage, Glen Elandra Liege, Melibul Imposter, Rankle Master of Pranks, Sow of Temptation, Archmage of Echoes, Una Queen of the Fae, Hullbreaker Horror, Shadow Puppeteers. Next are the spells of this deck. In this deck there is 21 in total. A lot of draw cards, and I mean a lot of draw cards, but there are some really good ones and I'll have them on screen now. Theatrical Duplication, Illusionist's Gambit, Nightmare Unmaking, Perplexing Test, Thrilling Encore, Tagwell Scoring, Kindred Dominance. Now the artifacts in the deck. To be honest, this is where the deck kind of slides down a little bit, but I'm also not complaining fully. I understand where they come from. When it comes to the artifacts, they are all mana rocks, and they're all the mana rocks you expect you would get in a type of deck like this, but there is a brand new card, so I'll just be mentioning that one. Misleading Signpost. For 2 and a blue, you get an artifact that is a rare. It has flash. When Misleading Signpost enters the battlefield during your opponent's declared attacking step, you may reselect the player or permanent's target attacking creature is attacking. Tap, add a blue. And then the enchantments. When it comes to this deck, there is a total of 2 enchantments, and when you look at them, you're like, that makes sense for what this deck needs, but there's not a bit of oomph when it comes to the enchantments, so I'll be talking about both of them now. Reconnaissance Mission, Reflections of Licharger, and then finally, the lands of the deck. When it comes to this deck, there's a total of 29 lands in total, and to be honest, when it comes to this deck, it started off really good and then slowly got worse. But I still do think it is a moderately good deck. But I do think if you want this to be a mediocre to a good deck, you would have to change some of the cards or change it around. But here are some of the good lands on screen now. Choked Estuary, Demir Aqueduct, Path of Ancestry, Sunken Hollow, and then my overall view. Now I'm gonna say this before I say anything else. I'm probably gonna be a little bit biased because I want to make a fairy deck of my own with the new uncommon commander. I have it on my Mox field if you're interested. Link will be down below. But that's the main reason I want this deck. This deck seems like it would be really, really good if you have the old Alana deck, the 3-color fairy from the original Eldraine, for upgrades for that. It is also really good for a skeleton or a kind of starter for a new fairy deck. You do get good cards when it comes to the spells and creatures, especially if you're looking for some of them fairies. However, when it comes to the artifacts, they're okay. Then the enchantments, you understand why they're there, but there's no oomph. And then the lands are quite weak. The weakest point, especially since you're popping out in Ireland, €55 for this deck does not seem worth it. I would say it's more on the 30 to 40 range. But I've always not given out about the lands base, but I'm like, the lands could be better to make it more worth it in my opinion. Overall, is this deck worth it? If you're buying it for the sake of buying it, no. If you have plans for it, kind of if you're making a fairy deck, if you know someone making a fairy deck, if you want to upgrade your fairy decks, then yes, I do think it is worth it. One card I would have loved to absolutely see in this deck is a Bitter Blossom, but I know that that card's expensive and they will not do that. But overall, this deck is very good. It is probably one of the better commander decks I've seen this year in my opinion, but still needs a little bit of work. But as always, I would love to hear what you think of this deck in the comments down below. Let me know what cards you would love to have seen in this deck in the comments down below. While you're there, remember to like, subscribe and follow me on all my social media, and I will see you in the next video. Also, if you like this video, I have the other commander deck here, a playlist of Is It Worth It here, and a subscribe button here, which really does help.